going to go over interim logistics quickly with you for the interims next week. And then 10th grade, you're actually going to be dismissed because 9th graders, we're going to go over their GPAs and the status of what they look like. Right? Pretty straightforward? Okay. So, who has been doing some conferences this week? I just want to get some feedback about how it went after we had our session on Monday. Hunt.
Specifically, like, what do you want to do? We did
Good, bad, same.
I think it went pretty well. I got more done. I put a list on the board, like some other people were doing. I hadn't done it before.
Okay.
And kids were excited to see, oh, this is when I'm coming up, instead of like, when's my turn? When's my turn? And I got a lot more done like that, because I guess they saw content there.
Okay. Cool. Anyone else? Yeah.
I was struggling earlier with just having more efficient conversations. It basically did to, I think, 283 students. So I took that feedback into consideration. I felt like the dashboard is great. It's just overwhelmed with all of the information. So just focusing on like 1 to 2 things per student. So I was able to get through about 5 or 6 kids in one advice. So that's feedback.
Yeah, Ms. Kane.
I tried less like telling them what to do and like more of like open-ended questions and hoping that they come to the answer that I want them to come to.
Okay, did you find that conversation took you a little bit longer, or?
I guess you just have to like work on like better questioning. It did take a little longer. I mean, if I ask them like 3 questions and there's still like no light bulb goes off, I'm like, well, how about we try
Okay.
X, Y, and Z?
Yes. Yeah.
10th graders had a weird week because we normally have homeroom until Thursday. But when I went over the all class data on Thursday, I posed questions that way. I said, okay, let's look at the demerits page. What's the trends? What do you think's happening? What do we need to? And so the kids came to it on their own.
Okay.
Tardy to class.
Started the class, baby.
But and grades as well. They came to the conclusion. A lot of us have issues in English, so they were willing to talk about it.
Great. Ms. Buzz.
One thing I noticed is that I do feel like from the beginning of the year to now, the majority of the students in my class are actually genuinely curious and impressed about their GPA. That they like wanted it. That's the first thing that they asked me when we placed the exam conference. What is my GPA? And I found it really helpful. I'm like, well, what do you think it is before we look at it to see if they actually do know it. Right. And then I also found it helpful when we were focusing just in one section that within an 8-year you could do anything happen. To ask what they thought it was first and then clicking on it and looking through the assignment to see what it actually is. I found that really helpful to see like their thinking is really way off and then for them to see if their thinking is really way off.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to get to in terms of like using data more during our conferences is to get them more excited about seeing it, right? They're always going to want to see whether or not they have detention, right? They're always going to want to see how many demerits they have by the end of the week. But we also, based on the conversation we had this morning about GPAs, we want them to kind of like be obsessed about it.
Yeah, I would say that what's been really useful is being able to look into the individual classes and see what the category weights are and what the percentages are there. That's been really helpful in identifying next steps for kids. Because even if I look at a kid who has like a 60 in a test, but like a 65 in homework, I'm going to prioritize homework over saying like raise your test score, right? Because it's not quite as an actionable step. However, homework is something we can work on while we're in advisory.
Yeah, it's a very good starting point for the conversation.
Right.
And it's actually that kind of data, I don't think you can find it easily on our school, like if you were to go to Quick Lookup. So that's something else that is good when you use the dashboard. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So I found that I had a lot of success when I have the kid type in all their grades into a GPA calculator. And then we focus in on one class where like that's the class you're struggling with the most. What would happen if you got a D there? What would happen to your GPA? So they can be like, oh, I could gain like 0.5 points if I just did that in that class. And I'm like, okay, so now what do we have to do? And then the other piece is I've been struggling to like, hold them accountable, so I created like goal lists. So they sit after our meeting, they set these up for themselves for the week and they put it on the board. And it's a new process, but I feel like that will help me and them stay accountable.
Yeah, that's awesome because that's the exact direction that we're going to go in next year. Like, is actually having them write them down and keep track of them from conference to conference. So you are ahead of the game. Good job, Mr. Smith. All right, one more. I think yeah, Miss Emmeline.
So something that I think I've been struggling with, or like just kind of like a personal headache, was like in some of the conferences feeling like I was like dragging them through the conversation. Like when they saw they had an F, like
why, you know, and it was just sort of this, like, I had to just, like, pester them with questions to get to the root, which was we would finally get to, like, I'm not doing these 5 things, and it was just, like, it was really, like, hard to get through the conversations, always having to dig, and they weren't, like, I wanted them to be more, like, bringing that to me, and so this past week, I had, like, 3 of my kids in my advisory, like, bounce through the door, and they were just like, hey, guess what, I brought it up from an F to a D+, I know I'm still failing, but I did those 3 things, and that's why it went up, you know, and it was just kind of like that, like, yes. So I feel like the conference is like, it was a little bit more like of a long-term change in my advisory, but like really positive that now, like just like this proactive communication and narration of like how it got there, what they did. I thought that was really great.
Fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to move a little bit towards just actually logging what you're talking about in your conferences in the student dashboard. Okay. So there's a lot of different reasons why I want to like kind of encourage you guys to start doing that more often. One, obviously, it just gives you a record of what you've done and what you're asking the student to do. And I'll actually show you a little bit later how you can actually retrieve that information from the dashboard. Obviously, it allows you to track goals, right? So from conference to conference, if you put into the dashboard, hey, I asked you to go to office hours every Tuesday, Thursday for math. I asked you to raise your hand at least 2 times in English, et cetera, et cetera. The next conference you have, you can sit with them and say, okay, did you do this, this, and this? And it's like a running commentary or a running conversation that you're having every time you meet with each student. Also, like, if I go in there, or Mr. McNabb or Ms. Connor goes into that student's dashboard, they can see what you guys have already worked on with them. You know, and if I'm going to have a conversation with the student, I can pick up right where you left off, okay? One of the things that I've done, especially with Mr. McNabb, he's had conversations with a lot of students on that academic warning list, right? And he sent out emails to you guys about what he talked about, like the bulleted list. So what I did was I just basically copied and pasted what he had in that email and put it in each one of those students' student dashboard. So when you're having conversations with advisors, you can pick up on the conversation where he left off, okay? Because he had action steps for those specific students. You could actually check in with them, okay, well, you, Mr. McNabb, and your mom, you talked about doing this, this, and this, how's that going, right? The more people that are involved with the student in terms of their academics, the student's going to be more invested. Oh, there's several people in this building who are really concentrated and really focused and motivated on helping me achieve, okay? So that's one of the things that I'm really excited about. Also, in terms of end of the year conversations with parents, it makes it a lot easier. Like, hey, we did this, this, and this in February, and March, et cetera, et cetera. We've set all these goals, and this happened at the end of the year. Your conversations with parents about what you ask the student to do and what they actually produce is a lot easier than just kind of like going off memory, if that makes sense. Okay? Well, let's actually go into the dashboard and take a look at how I do it. Okay, so Desmond Cole. So this is one of the students that was on the 9th grade academic warning list, okay? So as you can see right here, I went in and put a log entry for what McNabb did, okay? So the last session was here, it pops up. When you hover over what's in this box, you'll actually get the full text of what you wrote in there, okay? So let's say it's a week from now and you're Ms. Kane, his advisor, and you actually want to have another conference with him, you want to log another session. So you obviously click on the button, log session, all right, and this page pops up. It's pretty straightforward, okay? Sorry, I'm standing in front of some of you guys. All right, so you don't have to do anything with student number, student name, all that stuff pops up already. You put in the date that you're doing the conference, and then we have like 3 choices. We're going to talk about academics, attendance, behavior, check all that apply, and then this is just an entry box where you can just write text. Okay, you can put bulleted lines, you can put numbers, and so on and so forth. Then you go down here and you hit submit. You also have the option of just having Google send you the copy of your responses just like any other form. But once you hit submit, it gets stored in another link within the dashboard. Okay? So let's figure out where that information is. All right, so when you go to Okta and you go to ARC for Teachers, this pops up, right? After you go to Hamilton campus. So this is where you click for the actual dashboard where you actually want to pull up each student. But down here is what you click when you want to get a summary of all your log entries. Now, what you're seeing here is because I'm logged in, so I actually just see everybody's stuff, everybody who logged stuff. But when you log in and you click on log summary, you're only going to see what you've put in to each of your students' dashboards. That makes sense, okay? So what you can do, you can either organize by, I just want to see this one particular student. And I want to see all the different log entries that have been put into the dashboard for Desmond Cole, okay? So he's been conferencing with, looks like with Kane since January 21st. So what Kane can do is she can go through and see all the different conversations she's actually had with Desmond, and she can even like point out, okay, some of the things are the same, you know, have you noticed that we keep talking about homework assignments and office hours, right? We keep having these goals because I don't see you actually following through on that. So what are some things that we need to do to change? You know, that's an example of like how your conversation is going. Yeah.
So if I log in, it only shows my students or my homework?
It shows your logs,
Just my logs.
like whatever you logged in.
Okay, so then what if McNabb had a conference with whoever and I can't see that?
Yeah, you'll see it because what he's going to do, or what I will do, is he's going to actually go into the dashboard. He's going to go in here. He's going to log his own conference, okay? Because anybody can access any student,
Right.
right? So like,
But you said it only gets my logs.
It
It
had
only should be
McNabb's.
my logs.
It had McNabb's on it.
Oh, it did have it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's hers. And that's like an
I think.
Okay.
yeah, like, but if you order it by student, like I think I did it by student on other screen.
It'll be any conference.
Yeah. Secret.
And also on the advisory page, will it just show you your last log?
Yes.
Okay, so it'll just change it out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it'll just on this the actual student page. It'll always show like the last log that was put in, like the date of the last log, and it actually will show the text of the last log that was put in.
So do you have to indicate in the action step box who the conference was with?
Now, you don't have to. I did that because I didn't want Miss Kane to pull up all her logs and be like, I don't know what this is, I didn't put that in there, right? But I wanted to like preface it by saying, hey, this was actually McNabb's meeting.
So it doesn't assign the student to the person.
Who's actually writing. No.
Okay.
Okay? That's something that I'm actually working with Angela to see if we could change, like if there's like a field here where it says author, because you should be able, I would like to be able to go into the summary page and be able to filter by author so I can show everything that I've written.
Right.
I guess the one concern that I have, and maybe it's just because I'm old, but like, I sometimes feel like everything that we add adds like a layer of overhead, which like doesn't matter on one particular day when you're entering one particular log, because the more you want to make something a habit that you do, like, you know, realistically, like we're talking about doing this 5 times a day in 30 minutes. And it's like, it actually makes a big difference if it takes 30 seconds or 50 seconds, you know? So I would actually be in favor of like auto-filling as much as possible, taking out any questions that aren't completely vital, because I think even the difference between like the time that it takes it to load versus if it were like one window, like what I wish actually is that you could just type it into a little box right on the student's dashboard and not put anything else except for 2 action steps and hit go.
Okay.
Because I think even that little difference in overhead, A, it makes a difference in how often I can realistically log it, and B, one of the things that I think about a lot with PowerSchool is if I can make a parent phone call and PowerSchool it, I will. But if I have a choice between making the phone call and making the log, I will make the phone call. Like we have to remember that doing the thing is actually still more important than like keeping a record of the thing.
Right. I agree. So like, the good thing about this is that we can make changes any way we want to make it more user friendly. Like, for example, the whole like the speed piece, that annoys me and I know it annoys everybody in here, right? So like, I'm working with Angela like, hey, you know, if I'm asking advisors, 19 of you, to do this same thing with multiple students in a 30-minute period of time, we have to make it faster, right? So she's like always trying to look at like the code to try and see to make that faster, because I don't want you guys to feel like, okay, Wade's asking me to do all this stuff, but I go in there and I'm sitting there in 5 minutes and I can't do anything. I've lost advisory time, right? So like, all those things are coming to account, especially like, how can I make it easier just to put something in quickly and